Let's talk more about the NPA and its failure to prosecute Timothy Omotoso, yesterday being acquitted along with his two co-accused, by the way, on more than 30 charges, including those of rape and human trafficking. The judge was so critical of the NPA's handling of the case that she said that even the cross-examination was shallow and did not live up to the standard of proving guilt. Let's get the view of Advocate Nthabiseng Sepanya-Mogale, the Chairperson of the Commission for Gender Equality. A very good evening to you, Advocate. Good to have your time on SABC News. I mean, to hear a judge tear apart the way in which the prosecuting authority conducted its case and even the cross-examination is quite stunning when you consider that this matter went on for almost a decade, yet still the state failed to get its house in order.
It is true, Nthabiseng, but I just want to start by saying it is actually very uncommon for a presiding officer, both judges and magistrates, to comment on the performance of the either prosecutor or defense attorney or any other attorney on any side in any matters that are presented before them. It is very uncommon. They usually stick to the facts as they give their judgment, and this must have been very disturbing to Judge Schoeman, for her to even make sure that she actually mentions it and mentioned it in such detail.
And now we've got the Justice Minister, Mameloko Kubai, who wants a report from the NDPP, the National Director of Public Prosecutions, who in turn, that's Shamila Batoyi, has now said that she wants a report, in fact, from the head of the NPA in the Eastern Cape. But that's cold comfort for the women who came forward and said that ultimately a man they regarded as their spiritual leader abused that because the state failed to prove that even after they'd given detailed statements that in some cases, in fact, contained contradictions but were still brought to court by the same NPA.
Yes, it actually is cold comfort. In fact, yesterday and even this morning, we as the CGE were calling out the NDPP to set up an inquiry of sorts that will go beyond just this case, because this is actually a microcosm of what is happening in our courts. There is something that is seriously broken and we cannot reduce it to this. Unfortunately or unfortunately, this was a high-profile case. There were TV cameras, everybody was watching. That is why the public of South Africa knows about it. However, this is very common in our courts, where as a result of the sloppy performance of prosecution, cases get thrown out.
What is at the heart of that, Advocate Sepanya-Mogale? Is it just incompetence? Is it a lack of training? Is it the brain drain that we were told had taken place, for example, where some of these entities were hollowed out and the best minds left, basically? Is that why we're seeing such a costly bungle?
Okay, it's actually all of the above, if you could allow me to say that. Number one, yes, it has been brain drain that is attributed to general attrition of people retiring and others moving on to private practice and other places. But there's also been a recruitment of very junior people into the NPA that is not in line with the level of skill that we need in the prosecution areas of the NPA. Over and above that, I actually think that the training is very outdated. The levels of our violence in this country and crimes generally has changed drastically, and therefore we cannot still be teaching people about situations where they will find evidence easily presented in court and argue this way or the other way. Fourthly, we now have a very aggressive adversarial situation where accused are not lying down and take it as it comes with remorse. They're fighting to the bitter end to get the state either to prove their guilt or for them as much as possible to give the state runaround before they actually agree to the fact that, yes, my case has been proven. Lastly, the bar of proof beyond reasonable doubt is quite a high one. That's the first, another thing. But with regards to a crime of this nature, where there wasn't ready evidence, that hardcore evidence that you can link through a laboratory, but rather more emotional evidence, a different kind of prosecutor should have been brought in. Because there was no hardcore evidence of a dead body lying there. There was something else that had to be presented, and somebody experienced who understood should have been there to argue that that is sufficient evidence that must be looked at.
Which brings me to my next point about a possible sanction then, if at the end of this, the NPA satisfies itself that the team that worked on this trial failed the victims. What is the appropriate sanction? Because then you've got a man who says, well, I was cleared by a court, so I'm going to walk free now, continue with my life, because that's the judgment, right? And you've got these women who say, well, we've been failed by the system because we stand by our version that the man raped us.
Okay. Number one, Omotoso was not cleared. Omotoso got off on technicalities. So that has got to be thrown out there. He was not clear. The state did not prove beyond reasonable doubt. The state failed to prove beyond reasonable doubt, but he was not cleared. That's the thing. Then the other thing that we also have to look at is, yes, the people who were involved in this case, there's got to be sanctioning that comes to them directly, as in the practitioners who were working there, the prosecutor, the supervisor of the prosecutor, and that system, the prosecuting system within that court and in that province. But above all, Advocate Batoyi needs to go and sit down with the powers that be and say, this is the picture that is out there. It's just that it does not end up in public. Give us more money. Let us recruit experienced prosecutors. What is the point of having specialized courts when you don't have specialized prosecutors? You know, we've got a sexual offences court, but if those people are not specialists of sexual offences, that's pointless. It's just the name of the court. This country is one of the few in the world where you have your labor court, your sexual crimes court, you have your commercial crimes court. We're supposed to be having experts left, right, and center in this country based on that. And yet we don't. Equality court, we're supposed to be having people who are very au fait with the Constitution and how to restore the rights of those who have been violated constitutionally. We don't have that. It's still a very generalist. People just that are using it, just go in there to use it without the firm understanding of that area of things. So it's
pardon me, and I use the word cleared because that was the narrative, right? Just immediately outside court as Omotoso's supporters were celebrating. So even for the women who still live in those immediate communities or still see other members of the congregation who supported the head of their church, now the narrative that is going to basically prevail is that he was cleared, even though, as you were explaining, he got off on a technicality, which leads me to my next question about how big of a setback this is for justice in this country.
It's a huge setback. It's a huge setback. You must remember there were 63 charges. And as the case was unfolding, they kept on being thrown out. That should have been a red flag just there and then. You cannot go from 63 to 32. And why they were being removed and being thrown out was as a result of the poor performance of the prosecutor to motivate on the value and the weight of those charges. We ended up with 32. As if that is not enough, even the 32, it is a serious indictment for 3 people to be charged with 32 crimes, and none of those can stick. So you must remember it started with 63 and went to 32. Now it's 0. So it's a serious one. Who will want to go with one charge in future? Who will want to actually believe that with these 1 or 2 charges, I will be able to get justice for myself in the courts? So it's a serious one. It's a serious setback. We cannot overemphasize the seriousness of this setback, Nthabiseng.
Good to have your time. Advocate Nthabiseng Sepanya-Mogale, the chairperson of the Commission for Gender Equality. Thank you for being on SABC News.